Bible appears more to whisper when it comes to sexual sin.
Are we going to keep bickering over secondary issues?
You asking me out on a date?
America has squandered her inheritance far too long. It's time she repents and returns home to her Father. Are we on? All right. Hey, y'all. Welcome to Business Makers. It's Friday. It's good to be with you. We're actually live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, so you can kind of check us out there. Also, you can follow our Twitter at Business Makers. At Business Makers is our Twitter handle, and you can follow us on our Business Makers Twitter handle over there. Business Makers will be having a pre-conference at our Fight Laugh Feast conference in October. And so you can go to fightlaughfeast.com to sign up for that. More information will be coming available. I have our speaker list for the pre-Business Makers conference already ready to be uploaded. The website is just not there yet. So Business Makers goes Thursday afternoon on October 31st. We got a great list of speakers, CEOs, and it's just really excited about the speakers we have for our pre-Business Makers conference. So go over to fightlaughfeast.com to sign up for that. And today I have with me, maybe I could ask him this, but I have a goat farmer with me to talk, business model, farm to customer. I think all these principles will apply to your company, how you run your company. And then we'll kind of towards the end get into what does it mean to use your business to support the kingdom, and the dangers of being risk adverse. So that's going to kind of the flow and where we're going to go with this conversation. Business Makers is about equipping entrepreneurs, business leaders, and investors to build, grow, and establish businesses for the glory of God. And we are ordinary Christians striving for extraordinary results. So thank you for tuning in to Business Makers. I'm going to bring, in just a minute, Joe in. If Joe's about ready to come into the show. But Joe, he received his Master's of Science in Clinical Human Nutrition from University of Bridgeport and a Bachelor's of Science in Human Nutrition and Food Science from Washington State University. Along with running his farm, he has engaged in graduate studies of sustainable food systems at Green Mountain College and is certified in permaculture design. Joe serves as an elder at Christ Covenant Church. That's a church over in Centralia, Washington. I know their pastor there too, Pastor Aaron Ventura. And he's also a board member at Christ the King Academy. Him and his wife, Elizabeth, been married for 16 years and have been blessed with 10 beautiful children. So Joe, go ahead and bring Joe in, Bree. Joe is the president or owner of Mount Capra and Mount Athos. And Joe, you can, of course, always correct my Texan way of pronouncing maybe the name of your company, but welcome to the show, Joe.
If that's the Texan way of saying it, then that must be the right way.
Promised land. Can't disagree with that.
Yeah.
So Joe, thank you for coming on. So I want to just kind of start maybe the first half of this conversation, just kind of talk about like the business model of, because you operate a goat farm, but you take all your product all your production milk from the goats and turn it into product. I don't know if I know we had you on a couple weeks ago on cross politics side of things, but I think it includes like cheese to vitamin supplements. And you can correct me if I'm wrong there. So I want to talk about kind of like the business model of this. It doesn't seem to me like farming is not like what would be maybe considered like a sexy industry right now. It's like, why don't you invest in the next latest greatest AI tech, that kind of thing.
Sure.
So maybe first start, we'll get into the business model in a second. Maybe first start, why is this industry so important to our economy and our way of life?
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's important because we all have to eat. Basically all of life is sustained by the 6 inches of topsoil that cover our earth.
Yeah.
Without those 6 inches on average of topsoil, we wouldn't be able to survive. And we need farmers to harness all of the goodness that God has put into this world, and pull from it the food that ultimately does come from the hand of God. And farming is a very Instagram friendly business, but it's not necessarily a very cash flow friendly business. So
Certainly.
a lot of great photo ops, not necessarily a lot of opportunities to turn
Mm.
that work into dollars. There's a joke that there's a way of making a small fortune farming, and that's starting with a large fortune. Um,
Yeah.
and so it's oftentimes, farming is a difficult endeavor to make work, to make pencil. So you have um, you need to make sure that you have a good plan for how you're going to actually make money if you're going to go into farming. Uh,
Yeah.
you want a hobby farm or a gentleman's farm, you don't have to make money. But you have to realize that farming then becomes somewhat expensive hobby,
Right.
expensive money, and definitely expensive in time. Uh,
Right.
and so yeah, farming is not going to be where you make your overnight millions. That's for sure. It's very
Hmm.
fulfilling work, and it's very good work. But it is hard to if you don't have a good plan, because we're no longer a nation that prioritizes small farms.
Hmm.
Make sure that you have a way of connecting up with your customer base,
Hmm.
because otherwise, there's not really a way to make it work.
It seems to me that maybe part of what you're hinting at here is government regulations have maybe made small farms really difficult to be profitable. As I'm in the Palouse region, we got
Mhm.
wheat, lentils, peas, garbanzo beans all around us. You know, hundreds of thousands of acres that are farmed,
Sure.
and it seems to me that that land keeps getting kind of what would you call it, like aggregated up to maybe a
Yep.
bigger, larger farm company.
Yep, yep, huge amounts of consolidation, and have there's been a lot of consolidation in the farming world for decades now. Um, there's a common sense idea in the government world that a lot of people ignore now, but it's you get more of what you subsidize and less of what you penalize. I
Mhm.
wish more of our leaders actually believed that, but we as a government, as an overarching body, the USDA, and in the state level agricultural arms, generally subsidize large farming, and really, whether intentioned or not, penalize small farms through just the high cost of entry and the high cost of compliance with regulation.
Mhm. And so how are you existing in that kind of consolidated world?
Yeah, the number one way we're able to do it is because we have a unique product to offer our customers. So, um, uh, we get you had said in the intro there that we make cheese, and we used to make cheese. That used to be a part of our business model. It's
Yeah.
not anymore. And whenever we give farm tours or people come out to the farm, they always say, "Oh, so can I buy some milk from you?"
Yeah.
Well, the answer is no, because we don't actually sell the milk by itself. We could do that, but that's a very limited scope of what the products can be used
Right.
for.
Right.
Um, and so the way we've been able to make it work, is by creating a value added product by tapping into the very real health benefits of goat milk.
Uh-huh.
But also amplifying it up by turning them into nutritional supplements. So now
Uh-huh.
instead of just a glass of milk, we're concentrating down the protein, or we're
Yeah.
concentrating down the minerals, or we are, for this very critical 6 week period in the spring, we're collecting colostrum as the goats are giving birth, and that's
Uh-huh.
incredible for digestion and immune health. And
Uh-huh.
and those are things you lose if you just make cheese or if you just sell milk. And they also are a lot more difficult to make
Yeah.
than just selling milk or just selling cheese. So it's probably not the spot someone would start,
Right.
but the way you kind of continue to survive
Right.
is you make sure that you're diversifying and you're giving your customers something that they can't find anywhere else.
Yeah. So basically you're kind of some sort of, manufacturing business really is what this is.
Yeah,
You,
one of the very interesting things about Mount Capra, because Mount Capra is our parent brand. The interesting thing about Mount Capra is that we have a connection to our customer and that customer is got a connection to our farm, our personal
Mhm.
farm.
Mhm.
And that's very, very, very unusual in the finished product world. And this is why so many people say go connect with your local farmer, because that's
Mhm.
really the best way of
Mm.
getting local food is by
Yeah.
connecting with your local farmer. And that is really good if you're looking for eggs and milk and grass-fed beef, and you should do that.
Yeah.
However, if you're looking for the products that we produce, there are other people that produce nutritional supplements, of course, but very, very few, if any, are going to actually have a connection all the way back to the farm. So we call this vertical integration, and
Okay.
vertical integration can have a bad name to it.
Mhm.
If vertical integration means that it's every step of a process is being controlled by an unethical corporation that
Yeah.
is just trying to milk every ounce of profit out. We look
Sure.
at vertical integration as us guaranteeing product quality,
Mhm.
guaranteeing the fact that you are getting products that are coming directly from us. And
Yeah.
so we don't sell our milk to a co-op, we process it ourselves. We don't sell
Yeah.
our milk to a co-packer, we
Yeah.
package it ourselves. We don't send it off to a 3PL, a third-party logistics center. We package it and send it to you directly. So
Mhm.
that's what we mean by vertical integration. And vertical
Right.
integration can be really useful. It's not always
Mhm.
the best case, but in our case, it's helped. It's been very helpful.
Yeah, so let's focus on that for a minute. Vertical integration, basically you're just saying our raw materials are goats, and then we work with the raw material and we turn it into the product that you see on the shelves.
Yep.
But you are not outsourcing, your um what would you call it, your recipe to a bottler or to a vitamin producer. You're making all that recipe there, and in addition to that, you have the technology to put it in capsules, vitamin capsules, and then and then all the way into it ends up in the bottle that you send us. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
that's
You're
that's
doing all that.
that's mostly true.
Okay.
I'll just grab a
Yeah.
bottle here. So, like for example, we have a product here. It's called Clean Minerals.
Yeah.
This product came from our farm.
Uh-huh.
We've been making this product for almost 100 years. We
Mhm.
put in the bot. We milk the goats. We dried the milk. We extracted the minerals. We put in the
Mhm.
bottle. We ship it to you.
Yep.
Now that's a food, and so we do all of our own food manufacturing in house.
Uh-huh.
A very small portion, you might actually think this is interesting, that
Yeah.
a very small percentage of what we do is actually technically supplements, because
Okay.
a dietary supplement falls under a different set of regulations. It's
Okay.
closer to like the pharmaceutical world.
Okay.
We actually don't manufacture dietary supplements in-house.
Okay.
We do send our products out to have
Okay.
them packaged in basically an FDA GMP
I see.
certified
Yep.
facility to
Mhm.
do the dietary supplement side.
Yeah.
But 90% of what we produce is food, and we do
Mhm.
the food in-house. So
Okay. That's helpful. And then so you send your vitamin product or your vitamin recipe to an FDA approved facility
correct.
for vitamins, and how do you control the quality of what they're doing?
Yep.
Obviously, you have defined things with your recipe,
Yep.
but how do you control that quality?
Yeah. Uh, it's definitely, once again, it's a small portion of what we do,
Mhm.
but it is definitely one of the areas where when we have to deal with third-party manufacturers, we are always grateful for the things that we can do ourselves in-house,
Yeah, right.
because there is a level of trust but verify that has
Mhm.
to always
Yeah,
be happening.
yeah,
You got to start with a third-party manufacturer that you can first trust,
yeah,
but then you always have to verify. So we have a very stringent process of testing and examination when we receive a batch of
right,
dietary supplements from a manufacturer.
right,
Generally, there's about a 10-day quarantine, a 10 business day quarantine period for those products where we are doing a variety of tests. We're sending off for third-party lab test results as well, before we'll actually put that into circulation. So
yeah,
that's how we verify it. And it's pretty industry practice to do that. At least you're supposed to,
yeah,
and that's how we do it.
right. And so, let's talk like pricing, the manufacturing, the production process.
Yep.
So meaning that how how do you break down the cost of goat per per outcome of product? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
How many goats do you need to produce one bottle of supplements or one bottle of food, one container of food?
Yeah. There's not really a great way of putting that down to a per goat definition,
Yeah,
especially because when you're producing a product, Weyerhaeuser is a large forestry company here on the west side of Washington,
yeah.
and Weyerhaeuser has a team of accountants. Um, and we talk about Weyerhaeuser because in some ways our products are similar to that. Not that we put sawdust in our products,
Yeah.
but because when Weyerhaeuser goes and clears a forest, there's all sorts of um, of outputs that they're creating from that. Everything
Mhm,
from, of course, things like lumber, but even like sawdust and
mhm.
all the different scraps that come from the work that they're doing. When we bring in and they have to quantify where that price is going to be attached. And so in your
Right.
general accounting practices, generally accepted accounting practices, you have to decide, okay, if I'm taking this milk and I'm making cheese from it, I'm going to have leftover that either is getting thrown away or is being sold. And
Right.
then I have to, if I'm selling it, I have to put a price on that. And then I also have to
Yeah.
put a price on my main output.
Yeah.
Or do I decide to put all my price on my main output and everything else is just gravy and it actually has a cost of goods of zero?
Right.
All that to say is that there isn't actually, because you're talking about a living biodynamic organism like a goat, we definitely have minimums that we require the goats to stay at in terms of milk production.
Mhm.
But it's not the milk fluctuates, the solids of the milk fluctuate from month to month, and so
Yeah.
there's no like exact way of feed in, output out, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. So
So
how do you think about that? Well, all right, just look at it from a manufacturing side of things then. How many goats do you need on your farm at a time to keep up with the product and supply and demand with what you
yep,
produce and sell?
yep. And I'll go even one step further. How many goats can a farm sustainably support
Mhm.
while still attempting to have a certain level of vertical integration? Vertical integration is somewhat similar to like self-sufficiency. No one can
Mhm.
actually be self-sufficient, and no company can ever truly be vertically integrated because
Yeah.
you're operating within an economy where you're dependent on all kinds of things going right.
Yeah.
Um, and so a farm has a biodynamic limit to how many animals it can handle
Mhm.
before you have to start confining those animals and turning it into kind of industrial food.
Hmm.
And our desire is to never produce industrially our
Okay.
food. And so um,
Stop there for a second. How would you define industrialization of food versus kind of the manufacturing of food that you do? What's the
Yeah,
distinction there?
absolutely, and there really is a fine line between just good manufacturing practices and good farming practices, and then
Mhm.
you cross that threshold into actual industrial food. Industrial food would be where basically the way God made that animal is entirely ignored and inhibited. So
Mhm.
if an animal was meant to eat grass and they never eat grass,
Mm.
then you've essentially crossed the line, and you've industrialized them into a kind of a cog, a bioorganic cog in an
Yeah.
industrial machine.
Yeah.
In a lot of the dairy world is like this. They don't feed grass, or they don't let their animals graze on grass,
Yeah.
because they're essentially taking concentrates, grain,
Right.
and just transferring that into milk.
Right.
Much lower quality milk, of course, but it pencils out for them
Right.
better.
Right.
And so industrial, there's actually they in the agricultural world they call them CAFOs, confined animal feeding operation. And a
Okay.
CAFO,
Yeah.
that's actually what the government calls it, is CAFOs.
Yeah.
Uh, CAFOs are the kinds of if you ever drive by a CAFO, if it's a beef CAFO or if it's a pig CAFO, immediately, because the smell is horrendous, and it doesn't have a good like farm smell. It just
Yeah.
has like a nuclear waste smell to it.
Ooh.
Uh,
Okay.
you know, so that's that's kind of the thing that you're constantly balancing is you
Yeah.
can't just put an unlimited amount of animals on a piece of land,
Right.
because there is a limit to how much that land can hold.
Right.
Um, it's a really fascinating study in the way American farmers have just destroyed our topsoil.
Yeah.
Um, and the Dust Bowl is an amazing example of us just actually having, people make fun of climate alarmists because they're ridiculous, and in their
Right.
you know I'm 50 years from now the weather is going, I'm upset about the weather 50 years from now,
Yeah.
but that ignores the fact that man actually can just be very destructive.
Right.
And in large parts of the Midwest, there are areas that because it had been continually grazed by ruminants for so long, that the topsoil had just built up to just feet thick, 3-4 feet of topsoil in areas, and the best kind of topsoil, because those areas of the ground were never they were never overpopulated by bison or anything, because
Uh-huh.
bison would come through and they would always have this pressure of a predator behind them. And so
Mhm.
you'd have this like
Hmm.
built-in rotational grazing pattern. Well, those
Yeah.
are the kinds of things that we try to do on our farm, is to kind of mimic what these patterns that you see in nature, where an
Uh-huh.
animal is never confined to a piece of ground indefinitely.
Right.
And not only do you have healthier animals, you have a far healthier final product
Right.
when you do that.
Right. That's very interesting. Um, and y'all, we're live, so if there's any questions you want to ask while we're having a conversation here, please jump in. I can see the questions on really just YouTube and Facebook. I'm not going to monitor Twitter right now. Don't have the ability to do that right now. But you mentioned the Dust Bowl. I've never had a good answer on. I know this is getting a little off topic, but now you're scratching a curious itch of mine. How do you think the Dust Bowl happened?
Yeah. The Dust Bowl happened for a variety of reasons. There's a fantastic book by Timothy Egan called "The Worst Hard Time." It's called "The Worst Hard Time," and it's an amazing book. But essentially, what happened is, this is another one of those government interventions, getting more of what you subsidize. So the
Okay.
government was actually promising farmers $2 a pound per bushel of wheat in the mid 1920s.
Okay.
And so there was this mad rush to the Midwest and further, because all you had to do, because there was so much fertility in the breadbasket of
Yeah.
America, there was so
Yeah.
much fertility. All you had to do was just plant your wheat, and a lot of these farmers didn't even live on the land. They didn't even live on the land or near the land. They would come in, plant, and then they would come back in the harvest time and reap this great reward.
Wow.
And so the government really encouraged a kind of a ravaging of the land. There was no thought to, like, is this actually good for the land or not? And so you had people just overcoming the land with very destructive forms of plowing,
Yeah.
where they would actually just turn everything upside down. So there would be no grass anywhere. And what they didn't know at the time was that the United States was coming into a 10, I think, to 10 to 15 year drought, and it was
Yep.
this crazy 100-year, maybe it was a 500-year drought. But
Okay.
so there was just incredibly low levels of rain for years and years and years. And by the time the Dust Bowl was kind of almost over, people didn't know it at the time, but the market for wheat had
Yep.
gone down to the actual price, which was 10 cents per bushel. So the government had been promising $2 a bushel. Everybody ran out, plowed up all the Great Plains.
Yep.
Then this huge drought hit and just blew all of that topsoil everywhere. So we lost so much of our topsoil because of it's like the government. I think it was the government of India that promised a bounty for every snake that you would bring in. And so they had just like snake farmers just growing snakes so they could bring them in for the bounty.
Yep.
And then the government stopped paying the bounty, and then
And
everybody
all
let
these
their snakes
everywhere.
go. There were snakes everywhere.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So, anyways, that is why farming is so important. We need farmers who care about the land, who actually care to pass this land on, not just to their son or to their son's son, but 10 generations from now. I want people I want people who don't remember me, I'll be forgotten, but
Yeah.
people are still here. Stouts are still here farming this land with the intention of their generations, 10 generations from then.
Yeah. Okay. We'll get back to your company here in a minute and your business model and stuff, but I live in the Palouse region.
Yes.
And likely the Palouse region was some sort of volcanic basalt that got covered by the Northwest Flood. And the Great Northwest Flood kind of was an ice dam up in Canada, broke, and then went all over Montana, Idaho, Eastern Washington, and it dropped a bunch of topsoil on top of this basalt, basically.
Yeah.
And so our region is basically what the breadbasket, was before. The topsoil is amazing up here. I mean, you plant wheat, you can leave, and then you come back. Same concept.
Yep.
And we got wheat, garbanzo beans, as I already mentioned, peas, lentils, all that stuff going on up here. Topsoil is pretty amazing. How do we not repeat the Dust Bowl in the Palouse?
Yeah. Well, anytime you monocrop anything, and monocrop is just where it's just acre upon acre upon acre of the same thing. You always open yourself up to potential disastrous issues. Think of the Irish potato famine. They had a particular blight that came through and just wiped out all the potatoes. There was a great famine because of it.
Right.
But if you have a variety, if you have a biodynamically diverse things that you're growing, then you can kind of offset against that some. Now, that being said, nobody produces more wheat than the Palouse region. In fact, I want to say I think Washington is one of the biggest wheat producers in the world. But when you combine Idaho and everybody in the Palouse region, there is also a sense in which you cannot produce the level of feeding the world like you can with the way you all grow wheat.
Right.
So I'm not like sitting here thinking that you guys need to all have organic farms on the wheat fields. I don't actually know what the answer would be, other than we did learn quite a few things on how not to absolutely destroy the land because of as a result of the Dust Bowl. But I know one of the major things, one of the major fights that is right now going on in the agricultural world, especially for places like the Palouse, maybe less the Palouse, but definitely in the Great Plains area, is just water. Where do you get all this water? Because during the Dust Bowl, they relied entirely on rain. They couldn't irrigate, and we have an enormous aquifer that covers, like, I think, a third of the United States, and it's slowly shrinking. Maybe not that slowly either, but it is shrinking. And there are towns on the edges of this aquifer that are now ghost towns because the aquifer dried up and you can't have a town without water.
Right.
So that was definitely a major issue, but also how to irrigate all of this is another a major conundrum, that it's very hard to industrially farm something to the extent that we do in the Palouse. And that would be industrial farming. It's not necessarily a terrible thing, but it is very hard to sustain for a long period of time. If you run out of water, it's over, and if you run out of topsoil, it's over. So there is definite risk in that. It's not an unlimited resource, that's for sure.
So I do know the farmers, I think, around here do rotate crop a little bit.
Sure.
They'll go from wheat to barley to canola oil is also produced out of here. So I know they do rotate a little bit. Does that maybe cure some of that problem or help?
Yes. Yeah. Crop rotations, not only is it biblical, but it also is a very important thing to do. And I don't know. I'm not sure how much soy you guys grow over there, but soy or different types of nitrogen fixing plants are really, really important because they actually pull nitrogen from the air and put it into the soil. So that's really important. definitely crop rotation helps. The way you plow in
Yeah.
windrows, and so that the wind isn't just taking everything away. That really helps a lot too.
Yes.
But we also, part of the reason why I would be against the idea of not allowing, fossil fuels in farming. Part of the reason why I'd be against that is because meaning that I'm for using fossil fuels to run your tractors and things like that. However, the big thing that we use fossil fuels for is actually our nitrogen, our phosphorus, and our potassium that we throw back into the soil, and that is something that we do in a very unnatural way. So the
Yeah.
natural way of rebuilding your soil is to put estimates vary, but basically people say it takes about 50 years to naturally produce an inch of topsoil. Now we can do that as stewards of the earth. We can do it much faster than the natural way.
Yeah.
But a lot of farmers farm large, especially corn is the worst. Corn is by far the worst.
Mhm.
But they just have enormous tanks full of nitrogen and phosphorus that they just literally inject into the ground, and that's a totally unrenewable way of growing crops, because it's not something that actually builds the soil. It only helps the plant for that one cycle, and the next year you got to do it again, and the next year you got to do it again. And so that's another factor of industrial farming that is very destructive.
Yeah.
Whereas the way we do it, hang on just a second.
Please. Yeah, please.
So I'm not sure you guys will be able to see this, but we had this like a drone footage of our farm.
Yeah.
And so you can see here, these are all different, like what you'd call paddocks. And so the goats, you can see like right there's just this little smudge. That's about 50 goats right now going into this paddock right there.
Yeah.
And what we'll do is we'll put them in that paddock for 3 or 4 days. We'll mob graze it. And then we move them to the next paddock. And then after we've mob grazed that, we'll move them to the next paddock. And one of the things that does is it helps them take off like the top 40% of the pasture, but it leaves about 60% there. Then we'll go through, we'll mow that down, and the second growth will come up. And so what we're doing is we're actually, the animals are adding to the vitality of the ground as opposed to extracting from the vitality of the ground. And then at the end of the season, we take all the manure that has built up in the barns and we spread it on those fields again. So that's the kind of way of building soil. And that's one of the reasons why we're able to connect with our customers in a real way, is that they can see the goats that actually produce the milk that actually is, feeding their little one, or that they're taking themselves. They can see that goat out there on the grass, doing what a goat ought to do. Whereas, go ahead.
So is that part of kind of like your way of rotating the land so the goats don't just like shred the dirt and soil and the grass too? Is that how you guys design that?
Absolutely. And there's all kinds of different factors you have to take in, from the wetness of the ground to the time of the season. Goats are also very susceptible to parasite growth, and so we have to be controlling for that, all using natural means as well. But the idea is that the other thing, there's so many things on this, Gabe. So if I'm going down this,
you got my interest.
Well, in farming, there's perennials and there's annuals, and so wheat is an annual. You have to plant it every year, and then you pull the whole thing up and you got to replant it. Grass is a perennial, meaning that it actually, you never have to replant grass, but you can actually kill grass if you overgraze it. And so I have a very interesting picture of our farm and the neighboring farm. In our farm, we intensely graze, which is so intensive grazing is where you put the animals on for an intense period of time, but then you move them off. That kind of mimics that predator pressure that we saw a lot in the Great Plains, where the bison would constantly be being moved around by predators. And next to it, we have our field next to it, their neighbor's field, is continuously grazed, and it's full of weeds because the weeds take over and the grass dies down. Well, when you grow a perennial, you actually never need to plow, you never need to turn the soil over, and that's incredibly healthy for topsoil development as well. So, anyways,
That's super.
There's all kinds of if I had a wheat farmer, I would have a bunch of questions because I don't know anything about wheat farming. But farming is there's a way of us as farmers where we can do it in such a way as to make a net positive on the ground. In so much of our farming practices that are encouraged by the government, subsidized by the government, are actually destructive. So
we're working on. Don't worry about it. I'm still here. My screen just somehow went off, so we're good.
Okay.
Pardon me, just a second. What? Okay, and see if we can fix it real quick. Hey Joe, we're gonna take a break and do an ad here real quick. Everyone who's hanging on there, I see your questions. We'll get to them here in a minute. But we're gonna go to a break here real quick, just see if we can fix my camera problem here. So stand by. We'll be back in a couple minutes.
My name is Joe Rigney, Fellow of Theology at New St. Andrews College. The Bible tells us that there are two fundamental ways to live: the way of the righteous and the way of the wicked, the way of the wise and the way of the fool, God's way and the world's way. And every one of us must choose which way to follow, which way to live. We make this choice every day of our lives. This summer at the Called Conference in Moscow, Idaho, I want to clarify this choice for you. Using the first chapter of the book of Romans, we'll explore the two ways in terms of worship and glory, in terms of manhood, womanhood, sexuality, and in terms of our relationships with other people. The wrath of God is revealed against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. And the pleasure of God is revealed upon all godliness and righteousness of men, who by their righteousness celebrate the truth. The choice of ways is before you. I hope to see you there.
In a world grappling with joblessness, broken homes, and a crisis of purpose, we ask, why does work matter?
There are 1,000 answers to that. The one I like is that work makes us like God.
Well, because God works.
Work matters because you are a provider, and work gives you an avenue for providing for your family.
But that question betrays that a job's not just a 9-to-5 hobby, right? It's an opportunity to bless people. It's an opportunity to bless people at scale.
But the reality is that money is intensely important to Dominion.
I'm Kyle Hessler. I'm a salesman, real estate investor, wrestling promoter, father, husband, and a Christian. And I want to invite you to the first ever Workspace Conference in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, where we aim to glorify God through our work. Come and learn from speakers David Bonson, C.R. Wiley, Steve Jeffrey, David Reese, and Andrew Krapuschitz as we explore the theology of work, how vocations shape cultural dominion, understanding risk, and how to invest not just now, but in future generations. This conference is about action, not just theories. Join us for a prime hub of networking, career growth, and fellowship. We are building a community of impactful connections and collaborative endeavors that seek to extend beyond a single weekend. Join us June 28th and 29th at the Hilton in downtown Fort Worth, Texas. Tickets available at workspace.com. This is more than just a conference. This is a commitment to glorifying God in our work, because we aren't saved by our good works. We are saved by Christ for our good works.
Today we are going to be talking about the Kyle Rittenhouse Always Ready bundle available at armoredrepublic.com. It's a very practical kit, including everything that you need all the way from hydration to first aid to general purpose to magazine holders and to a very comfortable plate carrier. So included is the Testudo Gen 3 plate carrier, and we also have 2 C3 plates that I've included in the bundle. So these plates are multi-curve, multi-hit ceramic, so they can take multiple rounds. I really like these plates because it's going to offer level 4 protection. Thank you guys for watching. Again, you go to armoredrepublic.com, linked below, and you can purchase your Kyle Rittenhouse Always Ready bundle today.
All right, we're back. Go ahead and bring Joe back in. Hey man, sorry about that little glitch. We turned the camera off and turned it back on, and there you go, fixed it. But as
dream,
yeah, that's right. But as we got a couple more questions we're going to get to here in a second. But one thing I've been thinking about, me and my wife do Water Break. It's kind of our faith and fitness show. And I've talked with my wife a lot about this. The whole idea between like organic food or I guess whatever you want to say, non-organic food. to me, those categories don't really make sense. Because even like, sure, if we're pumping our food full of some sort of preservative, for meat, whatever, that still like came from the earth. It still came from God's creation. It still came from what they want to. It's organic. And chemicals are organic. I mean, everything's organic. If so I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on like this division or definition between kind of organic and non-organic food.
Yeah, it's a wonderful question, and it's something we should all be putting to thought, because we don't want to be useful idiots in the hands of food marketers.
Yeah.
And the fact is that you can have organically grown seed oils in organic, mixed with organically grown cornmeal, and you can have very health detrimental food that is all organic, all by the book, and with the proper seals and all that. And so I am not an exclusive organic buyer by any means. And I would say,
let me back you up there. First, fine. This question is actually coming from Magnus Connor too here. But like, how would you define organic food?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So one of the ways that you would define organic food, of course, there's like is it USDA certified organic? Some people would say that that's like the bare minimum of what organic should be.
Yeah.
But in terms of Magnus's question is there a problem with non-organic food? There certainly could be. Yeah, there certainly could be. No question about that.
Yeah.
But I don't think that there has to be at all. Our customers ask us all the time, why aren't you guys certified organic? And I tell them, we follow organic based practices, but the amount of premium that would have to be on top of the price we already set would not be worth it to you, and it would not be worth it to us.
To get that organic premium, like a marketing stamp.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Yep,
So you have to pay for that stamp.
Oh, you got to pay.
You can't just say like, oh, I'm following these organic practices, therefore I'm organic. You have to pay for that stamp.
Absolutely. So yeah,
Wow.
it would be like I can tell people that we follow organic practices, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't have to pay for that. But if I want to write on my product that it's you want to use the word organic, then you got to pay big time to use that word. And so there's.
Did you say natural?
Yeah, you can say natural because natural or all natural has never actually really been defined.
Yeah.
And so again, all natural is one of those words that it's not a bad word to use. We use it ourselves, but it doesn't necessarily mean.
It's not telling you too much about life.
It's not telling you that much. Exactly.
Yeah.
What we try to communicate to people is kind of like wholesomeness. Is something whole,some or not? Because you could have a conventionally grown wholesome apple, and you could have an organically grown non-GMO fair trade frappuccino from Starbucks, and it would and there would be no equality between the two.
Yeah.
And so Magnus, to your question, no, I don't think that there's necessarily a problem with non-organic food. Especially, I actually think one of the best things people can do is grab local people. Find local farmers. Find your local grass-fed beef farmer. Find your farmers that's producing milk, producing eggs, that kind of thing. That really is, and you can ask them what they do, but that's going to be your biggest. That is going to be far more. If you're going to spend extra money towards food, which is not a bad thing to do. 100 years ago, 33% of our paycheck would go to food.
Yeah.
And now, if you don't count eating out, it's like 10% of our paycheck goes to food.
Not with my kids. You got 10 kids. Come on.
Yeah, I got 10 kids.
Our food bills just keep going up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and those numbers I just said, they probably are different now with inflation and all that. But, but the fact is that we used to spend a lot more money on our food, and that was just the natural part of life.
Yeah.
We've grown very accustomed to subsidized food prices. And it's it's one of those things where, anybody who had to go through the Great Depression would look back on food scarcity and say, I don't want my kids to ever have to worry about whether or not they're going to have another meal. And that's why the subsidies are there. And I can understand that, but it also, now we have this soaring obesity problem. Now the surest sign that you're in the lower percentile of income is that you are heavily obese.
Yeah. So all right. So my question also is coming. All right. So there's kind of the organic and non-organic nomenclature.
Yep.
And then there's the, kind of real food or processed food nomenclature. And then I have in the back of my mind, and then part of this too is, and this conversation is so big, I should have you come on our water break with my wife too, down this conversation. But part of the problem is also industrialization of food has fed the world.
Absolutely.
In a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
So you have kind of this, blessing of industrialization of food. Now, I believe food quality has decreased on that, the minerals and the vitamins and the goodness that is in that food. I think that's decreased.
Yeah.
But you've also fed the world in some way through this. You have canned green beans, something that shelves. You have, in addition to this, we're the first real, the 20th century is an amazing century.
Yeah.
We have refrigerators, right?
Absolutely.
I don't think people quite understand, like, we have so much access to food because of the industrialization of food, the technology that came along in the 20th century for refrigerators and keeping food around longer. You can go to the fridge and get a snack, so you can have a snack 5 times a day. Like, I do believe what's happened here is, Cotton Mather says, faithfulness begat prosperity, and the daughter devoured the mother.
Absolutely.
And apply that to the industrialization of food. Huge, massive blessing.
Yeah.
Refrigerators, huge, massive blessing.
Yep.
And then you have this, at the same time in the 20th century, you have the rise of computer jobs and people sitting at a desk.
Yep.
Right. This is my problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I have a refrigerator next to my desk at the office. I have access to snacks. I'm working on the computer. I'm working hard, but like physically not working hard,
Yep.
And so with this access to food, we aren't doing manual labor like we used to.
Correct.
And then I think some of the food quality that we're producing is declining because of our methods and everything that we've been talking about.
Yep.
So it maybe speak into that, but that's, I think, why we have a more obese generation than ever, is because we took all this blessing and we don't quite know how to wield it well.
Correct.
For our own bodies and our own health, for a longer life. I want to be able to pick up my great grandchildren someday, right? Like, I want to bend over my own self, like, get away from me. I'll pick them up. I got it. I'm old. I know you're a little nervous, but like, so I want to be healthy for as long as I can and be functional as long as I can. So I know that's kind of like a big picture question, but like, kind of from the, how do we look at this blessing and at the same time maybe work on increasing the quality of what's in our food, stuff like that? I don't know. You go whatever direction you want to go.
There's another thing that's happened over the past 100 years too, and that is palatability of food has skyrocketed. And palatability is just how addictive is a food, and I use the term addictive very lightly. I don't think it's like an actual addiction, but how addictive can they make a food taste? There's a wonderful book called The Hungry Brain, and it's not written by a Christian. It's heavily evolutionary. So you just gotta ignore the evolutionary aspects of it. But the author taps in on something that is absolutely accurate about the world, the modern world that we live in, is that people don't know how to say no to hyper palatable food. Hyper palatable food is anything that is overloaded with salt, sugar, and fat. Those are the three main things that if you think about addictive foods.
Don't touch my salt. Don't touch my salt.
Hey, I'm with you there.
Texas, man, I got up here in the Northwest and no one would salt their eggs. I was like, what's wrong with y'all?
Right. No, absolutely. And
Yeah.
but there's a huge difference between you salting your food and the food production company salting your food for you and just having
Yeah.
that be a part. Like
Interesting.
Cheerios are a food that you wouldn't think of as salty, but they've got a ton of sodium in them because of the way Cheerios are made and the way salt works with the whole palate. And but in The Hungry Brain, he recognizes the fact that if you simply, and this is not a recommendation, but if you simply ate a bland diet, you would lose weight because your brain, he would say evolutionarily, but we would say was created to find sweet things, salty things, and fatty things, and just go to town on them because you don't know when the next time you're going to get those things are.
Yeah, right.
And so we have them, like you said, we have a refrigerator right next to our desk where we're sitting around. We're grabbing those things from the refrigerator, and our brain is just like, I want more. I want more, and I'm going to always perpetually store it for winter because that's what I was created to do.
Right.
And so part of the answer to this is cook your own meals. So if you eat out, not only is it terrible for your food budget, but it's terrible for your health because you will eat too much because it's good. Restaurant food is good. It's meant to be that way. So cook your own meals and just use fewer ingredients. It really is simple. Just eat less ingredients. If you find foods that have less ingredients in them and they don't have a whole string of ingredients in them, that's just a simple rule of thumb. It's not always going to work, but that's an easy way of just in your own mind think how many ingredients are in this, and try to eat as many single ingredient foods as you can. Because I mean, how many eggs can you really eat even with all the salt on them? You can't. Your body stops you after a while. Like I can't eat any more of those.
Yeah, right. This is super helpful. I got to get you on the show with my wife for this conversation. She'd love this conversation, and we've COVID. My family was always kind of like a little suspect of vaccines and stuff like that. My dad and mom were hippies, right? And so, but also COVID kind of just like tipped me over the edge. And really what we have before us is KB said, our food feeds dopamine effects, which is true, 100% true. But really what we have is oh man, what was I just saying there?
We were talking about vaccines and how COVID, because I think you're going exactly the same way that my family did.
And so, but now I just view everything, all our health is like this medical industrial complex. And even our Christian doctors were trained in that. Like they were trained at the University of Washington or whatever, pick your college. Well, that is a public university. And then all the studies come from the CDC and the FDA and all this. So we're just, this is how we got the food pyramid. The food pyramid is upside down. Because was it Big Cereal that paid for the food pyramid?
It's crazy. It's the lobby pyramid. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's the lobby pyramid. And now they got this like food circle or something really, really crazy. But I don't think we understood. We just believed and trusted our government so much, constantly saying they got good intentions. They got good intentions. And of course, they're involved in areas, there's authority problem that we recognize that God just didn't give them the authority to, to tell us what to eat, how to eat, and create a food pyramid for us. God didn't give that authority to the government. So there's that problem. Set that aside though. But we have this medical industrial6 that our Christian doctors were massively influenced by. And then you have a lot of the health studies have come out from kind of either lobbyist studies or the food industry, the Big Cereal industry paying for the studies. I mean, remember Kellogg was running a commercial saying if you eat a box of Kellogg flakes or whatever for 2 weeks, you'll lose weight. I mean, that was like some of the claims. You remember the cigarette industry did this. Like you need to smoke because it's good for your health.
I don't know. When people smoked, they were a lot thinner.
I know. I actually think we should go back to cigars and cigarettes. So but all that to say is like there's so much, we use it, the government's been using the term misinformation, but they are the misinformation with food. They really are.
Just misinformation from what they've told you.
Yeah. Right. And then, of course, big business in relationship to the government has kind of fed the studies and fed the ability for the government to lie to us further and all that stuff. So, um, but this kind of, I guess, goes back to the industrialization of food and the blessing that it was, and the mass production of tri-tip for me in my house. Right, you got the cow, mass production of cows, mass production of pig meat, pork shoulders, all that stuff. We did. I know I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but I'm painting kind of a picture here. One of the blessings of living in Idaho and raising your kids on it. We got 10 acres. I got just a little bit of property. But we raise our own pigs and we kill them, and then we eat them. So the kids know that we're eating one of the pigs. My kids sat there all day Saturday with me as we butchered 3 pigs. And they were playing with the hearts and got to touch the lungs, and they were blowing up the lungs and having a good time learning their food.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of the blessing of industrialization, but also we've gotten so far away from the knowledge and the reality of what it takes to get food to your table. And so which means we've just cast all this trust on this big industrial, big government, big everything. And that's just gotten us in so much trouble with our health and all that stuff. So that's kind of actually a plug for Water Break. That's kind of why we started Water Break, was because the health and fitness industry, the vitamin industry, I brought this question up to you before, the vitamin industry, they're so full of either not being honest or to lies, or to overpromising, underdelivering, or to there's so much bad there. And it was largely the food industry is this way, the vitamin industry and the fitness industry is this way, is where it's been mostly driven by fads and branding than reality of delivering on the promise of a good product. And so I mean, you're in this world where it's like, I want to produce a good product. I don't want the organic label because that's dumb. And I got to pay for it. And just all it does is increase the cost for my clients.
Pay a lot too.
With no benefit. There's no benefit. Your processes are still going to be the same. It's just branding you're paying for. So I don't, kind of just talking with you now about kind of this conversation. But what are your thoughts, kind of just on all that?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of started this off with, just how COVID has really opened the eyes of a lot of people. If I look, I've got 10 kids that span, my oldest is 15, my youngest is 5 months.
Yeah.
If I look at the span of those, 15 years that I've been having children, and how many vaccines my first kids got and how few vaccines my kids now have, which is 0 to most of them.
Yeah, that's the problem with my brother. He was born in a hospital and the rest were born at home.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Right. So, I mean, COVID, essentially what COVID did was the government took what remaining trust they had in what remaining trust they had with the populace, and they just burned it all. They just burned through all of it.
Yeah.
There was this huge division between people who wanted to do whatever the government told them to do. They would be the ones wearing a mask tomorrow if the CDC said it.
Yeah.
And then the rest of us, which are like, okay, I actually thought the government had good intentions, but they actually don't. They're liars, and they've been liars from the beginning. And now we're
figuring it out. Yeah.
Now we're figuring it out. Yeah. So I mean, all that to say, industrial food is a blessing. See, this is the thing, is that obesity is better than starvation, but it's not good.
Yeah.
And obesity, gluttony is not better, is not somehow like, it is better than dying from starvation, but that really wasn't necessarily the biggest issue before anyways. And so we still have a tremendous inheritance that is sitting in the ground in the form of crude oil. And so we should use that crude oil wisely to develop actual sustainable methods of energy production, actual sustainable methods of food production. Because if all we're doing is just saying, well, I can take oil, I can turn it, I can pull water from the ground, I can run my tractors, I can literally inject this oil back into the ground in the form of nitrogen and phosphorus, and I can do all of that and create this kind of industrial food. That might be okay just to make sure, as we develop better ways of doing things. But ultimately, we need to use that wealth very careful, very wisely, because if we're post mill, if we think we're going to be here for 5,000 years, I don't think we're gonna necessarily 5,000 years from now still be pumping oil out of the ground. Maybe we will be, but I think we'll have used this little area in human history to develop like actual safe nuclear power, actual solar power that actually can stand on its own feet and not just on government subsidies. So I think that's where the crossover between we've got industrial food, it's not going away. We should take more control of our own food supply by connecting up with local farmers where we can. We should also always be thankful for whatever food God has put before you, whether it's been sacrificed to an idol or not.
That's
you
right.
you can be thankful for the Cheetos.
The earth is the Lord's and all its fullness.
Amen. You can be thankful for all of it, and you should be. But you also should be. Each one of us should be operating within the fruit of the Spirit, which all culminates in self-control. And self-control really is the key to balancing this industrial food supply that we have, and not allowing it to control us.
Joe, that is so good. I don't want to take up any more of your time, but man, that conversation was fantastic. I do need to get you on water break, just to kind of have the more health side of this conversation too. Where's the best place for people to kind of find out about your products, order it online?
Yeah, absolutely. MountCapra.com is going to be where you're going to find our products. That's
Mount
Amazon,
as
Mary,
in
T's, and
MT,
Tom. Yep, MT Capra.
Yep, Capra.
Capra is the Latin word for goat. And we're here in the Pacific Northwest. There's a lot of mountains, but we actually live on the Mount Capra, but it's not actually a mountain. So
nice.
But yeah, MountCapra.com is going to be where you're going to find our products, and that's a huge thank you to you guys and Cross Politic for having us. The Mount Athos brand is kind of like our health and fitness brand that we've just kind of launched. But Mount Capra, we have been doing Mount Capra since 1928. So we're coming up on 100 years now.
Wow. Praise God.
In fact, I think somebody in the comments had said, let's see, where is it? It was about what was the step one to getting your business up and running? Velvet asked, what was step one for getting your business up and running? Velvet, on that question, in the business side of things, there was a lot of slow, natural, organic growth to the business. So it wasn't so much a push to immediately hit the ground running at the capacity that we're currently at. We've just always tried to make sure that we can grow into the whatever further growth God gives us. And so we really have been able to do most of it without a lot of financing. And because we've been going on so long, the startup capital, whatever startup capital there was back in the 1920s, I wasn't around. I don't know what their original startup capital was.
Right. Yeah. Well, so MountCapra.com, MTCARP.
So MTCAPRA.
PRA. Yep. CAPRA. And Mount Athos has his own website, correct?
Yep. That's Athos Perform. So ATHOS Perform.com. And you can also see the Athos Perform products on the Mount Capra website as well.
Okay, great. Just to get clarification there. Joe sent us, Joe supports Cross Politic, and he actually sent us a box of goods. And my kids actually love the protein goat whey that they drink as a snack, because we got away from, fish, cheese, and crackers and everything for snacks a long time ago. Yeah. And so this is one of the snacks my kids really enjoy. It's a great snack for them. I'm going to sneeze probably here in a minute. So, support Joe. He supports us. Really appreciate this conversation, Joe. And thanks so much for coming on, man.
Thank you very much, Gabe. It's been a pleasure.
Everyone, thank you for tuning in. Magnus, you asked how many times am I going to live per week? Well, we do Cross Politic Live on Monday and Tuesday. Monday afternoon and Tuesday morning, Cross Politic Live. And then me and my wife do Water Break on Thursday. Water Break on Thursday afternoon. And then Business Makers is every Friday morning about 9:30 Pacific time. and everything. So those are about 4 times a week, Magnus, and you kind of just, best place to really find us is on our app. So please download our app. FightLaughFeast.com is our website, and Fight Laugh Feast or Cross Politic in the App Store should get you to our app. That's the best place to consume all our content and everything. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to Business Makers. I enjoyed it.
What we must be is a people that are ready to war for truth, for righteousness, for the kingdom. In short, what we need to do is we need to dress up for the occasion, ladies and gentlemen. To forsake the cliches of the secular and the cliches of the Christian culture. And we need to march to a different tune that's led by angelic choirs rather than masqueraded demons. Because Satan knows the crucial target. He's seen the war. He knows where to target. He has inspected the holy places. He knows where the weaknesses of your faith are. And so we uphold it. We defend the faith together this week. We defend the faith once and for all, delivered to the saints. We need to understand what precisely are the devil's schemes. We need to learn to speak the truth boldly. We need to fight for the kingdom and to live rightly in the sight of God and man. And so this evening and throughout this week, you are called to be a priestly people. The kind of priestly people that engages the darkest enemy that you'll ever engage. And you're going to engage the darkest enemy, whose name we know, Satan. And we're going to engage him not mildly. We're going to engage him by wearing our baptismal attire, by wearing that which God has given us. We carry the name of Jesus wherever we go because Jesus is our righteousness.